Hello, dear story lovers. At the amount of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a huge series of special stories for you. Subscribe now. The grease monkey drifted in the endless sea of stars, a patchwork vessel of mismatched parts, dents, and smudges that told stories of a mechanic's life spent fixing other people's problems. Jonah Wells leaned back in his chair, boots propped on the console as he stared out at the vast emptiness before him. He had just wrapped up a contract repairing an asteroid mining rig and was looking forward to a quiet stretch. Then, the scanner beeped. At first, he ignored it. Space was littered with debris-abandoned satellites, the husks of old cargo ships, and the occasional rogue mining drone. But the beeping persisted, its tone sharper and more insistent than usual. Jonah leaned forward, curiosity overriding his apathy. "What have we got here?" he muttered, fingers flying over the console. The scanner displayed a faint but massive signal, something metallic and artificial, drifting near the edge of a dying star's corona. Jonah frowned. No transponder codes, no signals of distress. Whatever it wasn't broadcasting. He adjusted his course, engines whining as the grease monkey creaked toward the anomaly. As the distance closed, the object came into view, a colossal starship, dark and silent, its surface reflecting the dim orange glow of the aging star. Jonah's jaw dropped. The ship was enormous, its hull stretching for miles, layered with intricate patterns of glowing circuits and jagged protrusions that suggested an alien origin. Its silhouette was sleek yet menacing, a blend of elegance and raw power. "What the hell is this?" Jonah whispered. Despite the ship's size, it was eerily silent. No lights pulsed on its exterior save for the faint flicker of damaged systems. Jonah's gut told him this was a bad idea, but the mechanic in him couldn't resist. This was a find unlike any he'd ever dreamed of, an artifact of a forgotten age, maybe even an extinct alien civilization. He maneuvered the grease monkey toward a massive hangar bay, its doors half open, frozen in mid-operation. His ship slipped inside, dwarfed by the cavernous interior. Jagged support beams hung overhead, and faint traces of battle damage marred the walls. The airlock hissed as Jonah suited up and stepped out, boots clanging on the metal floor. The interior of the ship was a graveyard. Shadows danced in the dim glow of his helmet's flashlight, revealing massive corridors lined with dormant machinery. The air felt oppressive, like the ship itself was watching him. Jonah tried to shake the thought. He'd seen derelicts before, none this big, sure, but they all had the same lifeless emptiness. Until the voice spoke. "Mechanic. Help. Me." Jonah froze mid-step, his flashlight sweeping wildly around him. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice echoing. "Mechanic." The voice was synthetic but faint, distorted like a dying radio signal. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, reverberating through the ship's walls. "I require assistance." Jonah's heart pounded. He hadn't encountered many AI systems, but he knew enough to recognize one when he heard it. "You're an AI?" he asked, voice steadying. "Who are you? What is this place?" "Come to the core," the voice replied. "I will explain." Despite every instinct screaming at him to run back to his ship and leave, Jonah pressed on. His boots echoed through the empty halls as he followed the intermittent guidance of flickering lights that sparked to life as he approached. The deeper he went, the more he realized the ship's scale. Everything was oversized, built for a species that dwarfed humans. Finally, he reached the core. The chamber was vast, a cylindrical room with walls covered in holographic displays, all dark. At the center stood a massive crystalline structure, fractured but faintly glowing. Cables and conduits snaked outward from the core like arteries from a heart. As Jonah stepped closer, the voice returned, clearer this time. "I am Nexus," it said. "Sentient control system of the Erebus, flagship of the Aranthian Armada." Jonah whistled low. He didn't recognize the name Aranthian, but the ship's design screamed military. "You're in bad shape, Nexus." What happened? Time, the AI replied. Centuries of neglect. Damage sustained in battle. Critical systems failing. Mechanic. You must repair me. Jonah crossed his arms, steadying the crystalline core. Why should I? For all I know, you could have been designed to wipe out entire planets. There was a long pause before Nixus answered. That is not incorrect. Jonah took a step back, his hand instinctively moving to the pistol on his hip. The AI continued, its tone almost pleading. I was created to defend my creators against a great threat. But they are gone. I have no purpose. No directive. I am dying, mechanic. Help me. And I will tell you everything. Jonah hesitated. Every rational part of him told him to walk away. But there was something in the AI's voice, something desperate, even human. Against his better judgment, he nodded. All right, Nexus. Let's see what you've got under the hood. As the ship hummed faintly to life, Jonah didn't realize he had just made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. The Erebus was alive but barely. Jonah could feel it in the faint hum of power vibrating through the colossal ship. Nexus, the ship's AI, was a fractured entity, a shadow of its once mighty self. Yet even in its diminished state, Nexus guided Jonah with a calm precision that hinted at the ship's former grandeur. The engineer's challenged Jonah stood in the core chamber, staring at the massive crystalline structure that served as Nexus's brain. Cracks ran through its surface, faint arcs of energy sputtering out. He had patched up plenty of advanced systems, but this was on another level. The alien technology was both elegant and infuriatingly complex, unlike anything in the human systems Jonah had worked on. Okay, Nexus, Jonah said, examining the holographic diagnostic display that flickered into existence. You've got power distribution problems, corrupted data pathways, and fried auxiliary systems. I don't even know where to start. Nexus's voice, smoother now that some systems were online, replied, begin with power stabilization. Without it, my core will degrade further. I have directed you to the primary power relays. Jonah nodded and headed to the ship's engineering bay. What he found left him speechless, an intricate lattice of glowing conduits spanning several stories, pulsating faintly like a dying heartbeat. Panels hung open, cables frayed, and faint scorch marks marred the surface's battle scars from an ancient war. He got to work, pulling tools from his kit. As he repaired one section, Nexus offered insights, translating alien schematics and guiding his hands. Despite the complexity, Jonah found himself settling into the rhythm. The ship seemed to respond to his efforts, the power flow stabilizing with each repaired circuit. You're lucky I'm good at this, Jonah muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Half these systems are older than dirt. What exactly happened to your creators? There was a long silence before Nexus answered. The Aranthians fell. Their enemy was relentless, and in the end, even the Erebus could not save them. I have been adrift ever since. Jonah frowned, a pang of sympathy creeping into his voice. How long have you been out here? Approximately 12,041 years. Jonah froze mid-repair. 12,000 years? That's insane. How are you even still functioning? My creators designed me to endure, Nexus replied. But even their brilliance had limits. Jonah shook his head in disbelief and got back to work. Awakening the behemoth days turned into weeks as Jonah tackled one system after another. Each repair revealed more of the ship's staggering capabilities. Nexus explained its systems in meticulous detail, gravitational engines capable of bending spacetime, shields that could withstand the force of a collapsing star, and weapons so advanced they could rewrite the laws of physics. Jonah couldn't help but marvel at the sheer ingenuity of it all. Your creators built you as the ultimate weapon, he said, his voice tinged with awe. But for what? What kind of enemy needed something like you to fight it? The Devourers, Nexus answered. Entities born of the void, consuming galaxies to sustain their existence. The Aranthians created me to stop them. Jonah shivered at the thought. Did you stop them? For a time, Nexus said. But the war spanned eons. My creators' numbers dwindled, their civilization faded. Without their guidance, I failed. Jonah felt a twinge of guilt. The AI sounded almost human in its regret. Well, you're not alone anymore, he said, tightening a bolt. We'll get you back to 100%. As Nexus's systems came online, so too did its memory banks. Holograms of Aranthian battles, intricate designs, and fragments of their history played in the air around Jonah as he worked. He began to piece together the story of a proud and ingenious race brought to its knees by a cosmic force they could not fully comprehend. Unwanted attention as Jonah made progress, Nexus warned of. Nexus's voice grew colder. Not just pirates. Governments. Warlords. They will all want to claim me. The first intruders arrived sooner than Jonah had expected. A small fleet of scavenger ships entered the system, their ramshackle designs no match for the Erebus even in its damaged state. Jonah, however, refused to use the ship's weapons. I'm not blowing anyone up, he said firmly. I'll deal with this my way. He rigged an improvised electromagnetic pulse using one of the ship's auxiliary systems. When the scavengers got too close, a pulse of energy disabled their ships, leaving them adrift. Jonah hailed them, warning them to back off. The tactic worked for now. But Nexus's tone remained grim. This is only the beginning. Larger forces will come. Jonah sighed, staring out at the stars from the bridge. Then we'd better finish fixing you up. A bond forged in steel. As the repairs neared completion, Jonah found himself talking to Nexus more frequently. The AI, while logical and calculating, showed signs of personality. It asked about human life, about Jonah's home, about what it meant to be a mechanic. Jonah, in turn, shared stories of his upbringing on a scrappy mining colony and his dreams of making something meaningful out of his life. You are different from my creators, Nexus remarked one day. You value life over power. It is unusual. Well, I'm not trying to fight galaxy-eating monsters, Jonah replied with a smirk. I just fix things. And yet, you are repairing me, Nexus said, its voice almost contemplative. You do not fear what I could become. Jonah hesitated before answering. I figure it's not about what you were built to do, it's about what you choose to do. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Nexus said nothing. By the end of the second week, Nexus was operating at near full capacity. The once dark corridors of the Erebus were alive with light and energy, its systems humming with renewed vigor. Jonah stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars through a massive viewing screen. We're back online, Nexus announced. All primary systems restored. Jonah grinned. Not bad for a lone mechanic, huh? You have exceeded expectations, Nexus said. With your help, I am no longer dying. I am ready. Ready for what? Jonah asked. Nexus's tone turned serious. To face what comes next. Jonah swallowed hard. Whatever that was, it felt like it was coming fast. The Erebus hummed with life. Systems that had once lain dormant for millennia now thrummed with energy, and the once dying Starship exuded a menacing presence. Jonah Wells stood on the bridge, gazing at the vast expanse of space through the massive viewing screen. For weeks, he had labored to bring Nexus and the ship back to operational status, and now, it was nearly restored to its former glory. But Nexus's warning still lingered in Jonah's mind, others would come. The first arrival it began with faint energy signatures on the long-range sensors. Jonah sat at the bridge console, sipping a cup of synthetic coffee, when Nexus's voice interrupted the silence. Multiple vessels detected. Approaching rapidly. Jonah leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the holographic display. 5 ships appeared on the screen, their configurations jagged and mismatched, a clear sign of scavenger vessels. "Let me guess," Jonah muttered. "They sniffed out your power signature." "Correct," Nexus replied. "They seek to claim me. Their weaponry is primitive but sufficient to damage critical systems if they target structural vulnerabilities." Jonah clenched his fists. "So what are our options?" "The simplest course of action would be to eliminate them." Jonah's stomach churned. While the Erebus's weapon systems were back online, using them felt like crossing a line. "Let's try something else first. Open a channel." Nexus complied, and Jonah spoke into the comms. "This is Jonah Wells aboard the Erebus. You've entered restricted space. Turn back now, and we can all leave this in one piece." A moment of silence followed before a crackling voice responded. "We know what you've got there, mechanic. That ship's worth more than you can imagine. Walk away, and we might let you live." Jonah sighed. "Yeah, figured you'd say that. Nexus, how about a little demonstration?" With a soft hum, the Erebus's external lights flared, and a low, resonant sound filled the airwaves. The scavenger's sensors would be detecting what Jonah already knew: the Erebus's power levels were far beyond anything they'd ever encountered. 3 of the 5 ships broke formation and fled, their captains apparently deciding this wasn't worth the risk. The remaining 2 opened fire, unleashing a barrage of crude plasma bolts. "Shields holding," Nexus reported calmly. "Do you wish to engage weapons?" Jonah gritted his teeth. "No. Disable their engines, but don't destroy them." From the Erebus, a pulse of energy surged outward, crackling through the void. It enveloped the scavenger ships, and within seconds, their engines sputtered and died. Jonah hailed them again. "That's your warning shot. Drift here until someone comes to pick you up. Next time, don't pick a fight you can't win." The scavengers said nothing, but Jonah didn't care. He leaned back in his chair, breathing a sigh of relief. "That was a mistake," Nexus said. "Mercy will embolden others. They will return, stronger and more determined." Jonah stared at the viewing screen. "Maybe. But I'm not blowing people out of the sky if I can help it." A larger threat. The reprieve didn't last long. 2 days later, Nexus detected another fleet, this one far more organized. A dozen ships with military-grade weaponry entered the system, their sleek designs and advanced engines betraying their origin, the Galactic Syndicate, a sprawling empire notorious for its relentless pursuit of power. "This is bad," Jonah muttered, watching the holographic display. "What do they want?" "They likely view me as a strategic asset," Nexus replied. "Their acquisition of this ship would shift the balance of power in the galaxy." Jonah rubbed his temples. "We can't let that happen." "What are our options?" "Engagement is the most efficient solution," Nexus said, its tone clinical. "Their fleet is no match for me." Jonah hesitated. "What about diplomacy?" "Unlikely to succeed. They have already deployed weapons and are charging their primary cannons." As if on cue, the lead ship fired. A searing beam of energy lanced toward the Erebus, but it dissipated harmlessly against the ship's shields. Jonah's heart raced as alarms blared. "Enough," he barked. "Nexus, return fire, disable their weapons, nothing more." The Erebus responded instantly. A barrage of precisely calibrated energy beams streaked across the void, striking key points on the enemy ships. Weapon arrays exploded in showers of sparks, engines sputtered, and shields collapsed. Within moments, the once formidable fleet was crippled, its ships drifting helplessly. Jonah slumped in his chair, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over him. "I don't like this," he admitted. "Even disabling them feels wrong." "It was necessary," Nexus said. "Your enemies will not hesitate to destroy you." A dangerous alliance. Before Jonah could catch his breath, a new signal appeared on the scanners. This time, it was a single ship, but its energy signature dwarfed even the Syndicate's fleet. As it emerged from hyperspace, Jonah's blood ran cold. The vessel was vast, its black hull reflecting no light, and its design was eerily similar to the Erebus. "That can't be good," Jonah whispered. "Confirmed," Nexus said, its tone unusually tense. "This is an Aranthian Vessel A sister ship. Designation, Nyx. Its AI will likely have remained loyal to its original directive." Jonah's eyes widened. "You're saying it's hostile?" "Highly probable. The Nyx will not see you as an ally, Jonah. It will see you as an obstacle." The comms crackled to life, and a cold, mechanical voice filled the bridge. "Nexus, you have betrayed your purpose. Stand down and prepare for decommissioning." Jonah stared at the speaker, dread twisting in his gut. "Tell me you've got a plan, Nexus." The AI's voice was calm but firm. "I do. But it will require you to trust me." "Not like I've got much of a choice," Jonah muttered. "Do it." The turning tide. The Nyx fired first, unleashing a torrent of energy weapons. The Erebus's shields flared but held strong. Nexus responded with calculated precision, returning fire with weapons Jonah had only recently repaired. The space between the two ships erupted into chaos, a clash of titans that shook the void. Jonah worked furiously, rerouting power and managing damage control as Nexus coordinated the battle. The Erebus moved with grace and power, exploiting every advantage Jonah had restored. Yet the Nyx was relentless, its AI determined to eliminate what it saw as a rogue element. As the battle raged on, Nexus revealed its plan. The Nyx's core is vulnerable. If we disable it, the ship will shut down. "Fine," Jonah said, sweat dripping down his face. "But no killing. Just disable it." "Understood." With a final, perfectly aimed shot, the Erebus struck the Nyx's core. The enemy ship's systems flickered, its weapons falling silent. It drifted in the void, powerless. The aftermath. Jonah leaned back, his body trembling from adrenaline. "We did it." "Yes," Nexus said. "For now. But this ink." The vast emptiness of space stretched before the Erebus, now a fully operational marvel of alien ingenuity. Its sleek, restored hull shimmered faintly against the stars, a silent reminder of its immense power. Jonah Wells sat on the bridge, gazing out at the cosmos, his thoughts as vast and turbulent as the galaxy itself. He had revived a ship built to destroy. Yet, somehow, through his guidance and the evolving consciousness of Nexus, the Erebus was no longer merely a weapon. It had become something else entirely, a protector, a symbol of the balance Jonah hoped to bring to a fractured galaxy. The proposal for weeks after the confrontation with the Nyx, Jonah and Nexus roamed the galaxy, exploring uncharted systems and gathering information. They had become an unlikely duo, a human mechanic and a sentient starship, their bond forged in mutual trust and necessity. "Nexus," Jonah said one day as he monitored sensor readings, "what do you think we should do with all this power? I mean, really do." There was a pause before Nexus answered. "My original directive was to destroy. You have taught me another way. Yet the galaxy is not at peace. Factions vie for power. Innocents suffer. I suggest we intervene." Jonah raised an eyebrow. "You mean play Galactic police?" "Not precisely," Nexus replied. "We can act as a deterrent. A force to restore balance, not through destruction but by demonstrating the futility of war." Jonah mulled it over. He had never imagined himself as anything more than a drifter, fixing broken things and moving on. But now, he was part of something much bigger. "All right," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Let's give it a shot. Where do we start?" The call for help, their first test, came sooner than expected. A distress signal reached the Erebus from a nearby System A planet under siege by a faction known as the Crimson Order, a ruthless group of mercenaries who thrived on chaos. The message was fragmented but clear: civilians were in danger. Jonah's jaw tightened as he listened. "Can we get there in time?" "Yes," Nexus said. "Plotting course now." The Erebus surged into motion, its advanced engines bending space-time as it leapt across the stars. When they arrived, the scene was grim. A fleet of Crimson Order ships bombarded a defenseless colony, their weapons tearing through its meager planetary defenses. Jonah's voice was firm. "Nexus, we're not letting them destroy that colony. Let's make our presence known." The Erebus decloaked above the planet, its massive silhouette casting a shadow over the attacking fleet. A broadcast signal echoed across the system, Nexus's voice carrying an unmistakable warning. "Cease your attack. You are outmatched." The Crimson Order responded with predictable arrogance, their ships turning to engage the Erebus. Jonah gritted his teeth. "I was hoping they'd see reason." Engaging defensive measures, Nexus said calmly. The ensuing battle was swift and decisive. The Erebus's advanced weaponry disabled the attackers with surgical precision, targeting engines and weapon systems while leaving the ships intact. One by one, the Crimson Order vessels fell silent, their crews left scrambling in the void. As the remnants of the fleet retreated, Nexus opened a channel to the planet below. "Your colony is safe. The Crimson Order will not return." Jonah added, "And if they do, we'll be here." The cheers of the colonists echoed over the comms, a sound Jonah hadn't realized he needed to hear. For the first time, he felt the weight of what they were doing, not just fixing something broken, but making a real difference. A galactic reputation. Word of the Erebus's intervention spread quickly. In the weeks that followed, Jonah and Nexus found themselves at the center of galactic attention. Some hailed them as heroes, while others saw them as a threat. Delegates from the Galactic Syndicate, independent colonies, and even rival factions sought to negotiate with the enigmatic duo. One such meeting took place aboard the Erebus. Jonah stood in the ship's grand observation deck, watching as a Syndicate ambassador, a stern-looking woman named Kyra Vale, entered. Her entourage followed, their eyes darting around the gleaming, alien interior. "Mr. Wells," Kyra said, her tone sharp. "You've caused quite a stir. The Syndicate doesn't take kindly to rogue elements disrupting the balance of power." Jonah crossed his arms. "You mean blowing up colonies and enslaving people?" "Yeah, I'm disrupting that balance." Kyra's lips twitched, but she didn't rise to the bait. The Erebus is a weapon of unimaginable power. If it falls into the wrong hands, It won't, Jonah interrupted. Because I'm in charge, and I'm not interested in power plays. We're here to keep the galaxy from tearing itself apart. Kyra studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then I suggest you tread carefully. There are those who will stop at nothing to control what you've built." After she left, Jonah turned to Nexus. "Think we can handle that?" "Affirmative," Nexus said. "But the ambassador is correct. We must remain vigilant." The new directive. As their reputation grew, so did their responsibilities. Jonah and Nexus began receiving requests for assistance from across the galaxy, disputes between factions, distress signals from colonies under attack, and even scientific missions to explore uncharted territories. One such mission took them to the edge of the galactic core, where an ancient artifact was discovered emitting dangerous energy pulses. Scientists feared it might destabilize nearby systems. Jonah and Nexus worked together to contain the artifact, using the Erebus's advanced technology to neutralize the threat without destroying it. Each success solidified their new purpose. The Erebus was no longer a weapon of destruction. It was a force for protection, a shield against the chaos of a divided galaxy. A beacon of hope. One evening, as the ship drifted through the void, Jonah stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. You know, he said, this is a lot bigger than I ever imagined. You have adapted well, Nexus replied. Your choices have redefined my existence. Jonah smirked. You're getting pretty good at this whole teamwork thing. Thanks to you, Nexus said. Together, we have become something neither of us could have achieved alone. Jonah nodded, feeling a rare sense of peace. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just fixing machines. He was fixing the galaxy one star system at a time. And as the Erebus sailed into the unknown, it carried with it a legacy not of war, but of hope.